Imagine this, you walk into a car dealership. The moment you step inside, something feels different. The lighting is softer, controlled, almost designed to slow you down. Every car is perfectly positioned, polished to a level that doesn't feel normal. The reflections on the floor make everything look more expensive than it actually is. And without anyone saying anything directly, you start feeling something subtle. You start feeling like you are entering a version of life that is slightly ahead of your own. A salesperson approaches you, but not in a rushed or desperate way. There is calm confidence in the way they walk. They greet you with a simple question. Just looking today. That question sounds harmless, but it changes the direction of everything. Because now you are not just observing anymore, you are participating. You walk toward a car, it does not even matter which one it is. The brain does not evaluate details at this stage, it evaluates feelings, the shape, the shine, the presence. Everything is designed to trigger imagination. You open the door, sit inside, close it, and suddenly the outside world becomes quiet. Not just physically quiet, but mentally quiet. There is a kind of silence that feels expensive, like time itself has slowed down. Your hands rest on the steering wheel. The texture feels perfect. The seat wraps around you in a way that feels intentional. Everything inside the car feels like it belongs to a different version of you. And in that moment, something very important happens. You stop thinking like the person who walked in. You start imagining yourself as the person who owns it. The salesperson leans slightly and says, "Take your time, imagine yourself driving it." And you do exactly that. You do not think about numbers. You do not think about long-term cost. You do not think about consequences. You think about moments. Night drives, music playing, people in the passenger seat laughing, arriving somewhere and being noticed without saying a word. And slowly, without realizing it, the decision stops being logical. It becomes emotional. You are no longer asking whether you need this car. You are asking how you can make it happen. That is the first shift, and it is the most important one. Because once the mind switches from evaluation to justification, the outcome is almost decided. You sit down at the desk. Papers come out, numbers appear, but something important is missing from those numbers. They are not showing you the real cost. They are not showing you depreciation. They are not showing you interest. They are not showing you insurance. They are not showing you opportunity cost. They are showing you one thing only: a monthly payment, $650 per month, $720 per month, $800 per month. And suddenly something that should feel large becomes small. Not because it changed in value, but because it changed in format. The human brain does not process large totals easily, but it processes monthly amounts comfortably. So a $45,000 decision stops feeling like $45,000. It starts feeling like $700 a month, and those two perceptions are completely different realities. The salesperson continues speaking. You work hard, you deserve something nice. This is an upgrade for your lifestyle. None of it sounds wrong. In fact, it sounds reasonable, comfortable, justified. But what is being sold is not just a vehicle, it is a version of yourself, and that is where the real power lies. Because when a purchase becomes connected to identity, logic becomes optional. You sign the papers, one signature, then another, then another. No alarm goes off, no warning appears, no system tells you what is about to happen next. You simply complete a decision that feels normal in the moment, and then you are handed the keys, a small object, but it carries a heavy meaning. You walk outside, the car is waiting, clean, shiny, perfect. You open the door and sit inside again, but now it feels different, now it feels real. Now it feels final. You press the start button. The engine responds smoothly. You adjust the mirror, look forward, take a breath. And maybe just for a second you feel a sense of achievement. Then you drive out of the dealership. And in that exact moment, something happens that nobody tells you. You lose money. Instantly. Not slowly, not over years, not through usage. Immediately, because the moment a car leaves a dealership, it stops being new in the market's eyes. And in that market, new carries a premium. The value drops the moment ownership transfers and the car becomes used. And you do not feel it. There is no notification, no message, no alert. Nothing tells you that your net worth just decreased. Instead, you feel the opposite. You feel progress. You feel success. You feel upgraded. That is what makes it dangerous. Because financial loss that is invisible does not trigger caution. It triggers confidence. You arrive home, people notice the car, reactions start coming in, compliments follow naturally. The attention feels rewarding, and without realizing it, your brain connects two things. Spending money equals success. That connection is where the trap strengthens, because now the purchase is no longer just a purchase. It becomes validation. It becomes identity reinforcement. It becomes proof. But what nobody tells you is that while your image increases, your financial flexibility decreases, your monthly obligations rise, your future options shrink, your financial breathing space gets tighter. And yet everything still feels like an upgrade. Because the system is not designed to make you feel the cost immediately. It is designed to spread the cost in a way that feels comfortable. That is how long-term financial decisions get distorted, not through force but through perception. And once perception is controlled, decisions follow naturally. That is the real mechanism behind it. Not pressure, not deception, perception, and that is where it begins. You continue driving. The car feels smooth, effortless, almost perfect. Every small vibration, every sound, every reflection on the glass reinforces the same idea in your mind. You made the right decision, at least that is what it feels like. But what you don't notice yet is that the decision is already changing shape, not emotionally anymore. Financially. Because while you are enjoying the feeling of ownership, something invisible has already started working against you. The first shift is simple. The car is no longer new in the market. The moment it left the dealership, it entered a different category. A category where value is not based on emotion, but on resale logic. And in that world, the first loss is immediate. Not gradual, immediate. You don't see it on paper in front of you. You don't feel it in your hand, but the value has already moved. What you believed was a $45,000 asset is no longer $45,000 in real market terms. And the strange part is nothing is wrong with the car. It is still the same car, same condition, same features, same experience. But value is not based on experience. Value is based on perception. And perception changes the moment ownership changes. This is where most people get confused. They think loss happens when something breaks or gets old. But in reality, the first and biggest drop happens the moment the purchase is complete, and that drop is silent. No warning, no notification, no emotional signal, just numbers adjusting in a system you are not watching. Meanwhile, your brain is still focused on something completely different, the feeling of success, because the mind does not track financial loss in real time. It tracks emotional reward. You remember the dealership, the attention, the reactions, the moment you signed. The moment you got the keys, all of that feels like progress. So even if something is happening in the background financially, your emotional system is still celebrating. And that gap between financial reality and emotional perception is where most long-term financial mistakes are born. As days pass, the car becomes normal. The excitement slowly fades. What once felt special becomes routine. This is the part nobody talks about, not because it is hidden, but because it is predictable. Human psychology adapts to new possessions very quickly. What felt like a milestone becomes background noise in a short time, but something else does not fade at the same speed: the financial obligation. The payment remains, month after month, no emotional increase, no reduction, just consistency. And now the decision starts to feel different, not bad, just heavier. Because what once felt like a small monthly commitment now sits inside your financial structure permanently. At the same time, other costs begin to appear. Insurance renewals, maintenance, fuel, unexpected repairs. None of these feel large individually, but together they start forming a pattern. A pattern where ownership is not just about driving anymore. It becomes about sustaining. And sustaining is always more expensive than acquiring. This is the second hidden layer most people never calculate properly. They only calculate the price of buying, not the cost of keeping, and that difference is where financial pressure slowly builds. Meanwhile, outside your personal experience, the market continues to do its work. New models come out, older models lose appeal, value shifts again. And without you doing anything, your car continues to depreciate in the background. Even on days when you are not thinking about it, even on days when you are not using it. Time itself is reducing its value. That is the nature of depreciating assets. They do not wait for usage. They move with time. And while all of this is happening quietly, your income is still working in the opposite direction. You are working, earning, managing expenses, planning life. But now part of that income is permanently locked into something that does not generate anything back. It does not produce income. It does not grow in value. It does not create leverage. It only consumes. And because it is spread into a monthly structure, it never feels like a big decision. It always feels manageable. That is the psychological design behind installment thinking. It reduces resistance by reducing visibility. But reduction in visibility does not reduce total cost. It only delays awareness. As time continues, a new thought slowly enters the mind, not immediately, not forcefully, quietly. You start comparing, you see other cars, newer models, better features, different designs, and the mind begins to repeat a familiar pattern. Maybe something better is available. Maybe an upgrade makes sense. Maybe the next step is just slightly above where you are. This is where the cycle begins to repeat. Because once identity becomes linked with vehicles, upgrading stops being a luxury decision and starts becoming a psychological expectation. You are not just buying transportation anymore. You are maintaining an image, and maintaining an image requires repetition. That is why the cycle rarely stops at one purchase. It continues. Each time slightly more expensive, slightly more justified, slightly more normalized, until the pattern becomes invisible to the person inside it. From the outside, it looks like progress. From the inside, it feels like life. But financially, something else is happening. Money is consistently moving out faster than it is being converted into long-term value. And that is the core imbalance, not spending itself, but the direction of spending. At some point, if nothing changes, a realization begins to appear, not dramatic, not sudden, subtle. Despite earning, there is a constant feeling of being financially restricted, not because income is low, but because obligations are high. And when obligations are high, freedom feels low. That is the part most people struggle to identify. They assume the problem is income, but often the problem is structure. How money is allocated, how long it stays committed, how little flexibility remains after fixed expenses. A car payment is one of the strongest examples of this structure, because once it enters your monthly life, it does not leave easily. It becomes part of your financial identity, and changing it requires a decision that feels larger than the original purchase. So instead of changing direction, most people continue forward, because forward feels easier than reset. And that is how the cycle extends over years, not through one big mistake, but through many small, logical, emotionally justified decisions that slowly reduce financial flexibility over time. Until one day, without a clear moment of realization, the contrast becomes visible. Income may have increased. Lifestyle may have expanded, but wealth has not grown at the same pace. And that gap is what creates the feeling that something is missing, even when everything appears successful from the outside. Because financial reality does not measure appearance. It measures accumulation. And in many cases, what looks like progress is actually consumption spread over time. This is the hidden structure behind car ownership that very few people analyze while making the decision. Not because it is complicated, but because the emotional experience is stronger than the mathematical one in the moment of purchase. And once the decision is made, emotion slowly fades while cost remains. That is where the imbalance begins. And that is where most people realize too late that the real cost was never just the price of the car.